Monica Reed woke before sunrise, the way she always did. Habit came from years in the service and years as a nurse after that. She liked quiet mornings. She liked walking the fence line with coffee in one hand and the other hand brushing the tall switchgrass that rimmed her little acre. Birds woke with her. Crickets fell silent. The sky turned from steel to soft peach over the rooftops of Briar Ridge. Her house was not the biggest on the street. It was a simple brick ranch with a blue door and a porch swing that needed oil. The yard was Monica's pride. She cut the lawn herself. She edged the beds. She planted crepe myrtles the day she moved in. And she kept a tiny flag tucked under the mailbox because her father taught her to honor the people who gave her the chance to stand on any street and call it home. That morning the flag lay on the ground. Monica crouched and picked it up. The pole was fine, but the fabric was smudged with dew and dirt. She wiped it against her sleeve and set it back in place. The motion revealed something else. A plastic sleeve stuck to the inside of her wrought iron gate with a strip of bright yellow tape. A folded paper showed through the clear plastic. The words were large. They were printed in heavy black. Notice of violation. Monica felt her chest tighten in a way that reminded her of long overnight shifts. She slipped the paper from the sleeve, unfolded it, and read. It was from Briar Ridge Community Standards. It said her lawn decorations were not compliant. It said the rose trellis she installed last spring was not in the approved color. It said the rain barrel visible from the street created an eyesore. It said penalties would accrue daily. It gave her 10 days to remove or correct the items. It listed an office phone number and the name of the compliance chair. The name was Barton Hale. Monica exhaled and looked around. Houses lined the curve of Crescent Hollow Lane. Every porch held signs of life. A flamingo in the Wilsons' garden. Wind chimes at the Alvarez's place. 2 rain barrels by the Parkers' garage, painted sage green with leaf stencils that never matched any palette Monica had ever seen. She had lived here 3 years. She had never seen notices on their gates. She read the letter again. The tone tried to sound neutral. It felt like a finger jabbed against her shoulder. Monica folded the paper and slid it into her pocket. She finished her walk with her coffee and her calm voice inside her head, the voice that kept emergency rooms steady. Breathe in, breathe out, look at facts, ask fair questions. When she returned to the porch, the sun had climbed above the pines. A delivery van rolled by and beeped a cheerful horn. She went inside, set the kettle to boil, and opened her laptop at the kitchen table. She typed Briar Ridge Community Standards into the search bar on the HOA portal and pulled up the rules. She had read them before she ever made an offer on the house. She read them again now. She looked for anything about trellises. She found a line that said wooden garden structures must be painted in earth tones. Her trellis was cedar. She had sealed it clear. She scrolled to lawn water systems. Nothing about barrels. She searched. She found a sentence for water conservation that encouraged capture barrels as long as they matched the primary house color or were screened by shrubs. Monica's barrel was painted the same blue as her door and tucked behind a holly. She took notes. She took screenshots. She sent herself the files so she would have a record. At 8 o'clock, she called the number on the notice. A recorded voice said, "The office opened at 10. She stood at the sink and stared through the window at the rose trellis. A new growth had woven itself up the lattice. Tiny buds clustered like promises. She imagined cutting the trellis down. She imagined the roses collapsing and lying like broken ribs on the ground. The image hardened something in her. At 9, she showered and dressed in jeans and a white blouse. She tied her curls back with a black ribbon and slipped comfortable flats on her feet. She scanned and printed the highlighted rule pages. She placed the papers in a folder with the notice. She put everything in her bag, locked the door, and drove to the HOA office by the clubhouse pond. Barton Hale's SUV sat in a reserved spot right by the entrance. The vehicle was spotless. The plate frame read, Civic Pride. The office door opened with a chime. Cool air washed over Monica. Framed photographs of neighborhood events lined the hallway. At the end sat a desk with a brass nameplate. P. Barton D. Hale, Compliance Chair. Barton stood when Monica stepped in. He was early 40s, clean shave, hair parted like it had a blueprint. He wore a navy polo with the HOA crest and a smile that felt like a door that did not open fully. "Good morning," he said. "How can I help you?" Monica returned the smile. "Good morning. I received a notice. I'd like to discuss it." She handed him the folder. He scanned the front page, then flipped to the screenshots. His mouth tightened by a millimeter. "Yes," he said. "We've had several complaints. About my trellis and rain barrel," Monica said. "Your letter says they violate the standards. I brought the relevant sections. They show my items are allowed." Barton shook his head slightly. "Context matters. The trellis is unpainted. The barrel is visible from the street. The trellis is sealed, which counts as an earth tone because cedar turns brown. The barrel is painted to match my door. It's screened by holly." "From certain angles," Barton said. Monica let the silence stretch. She had learned that silence often revealed people faster than questions. Barton shifted. He set the folder down like it had started to warm his hands. "Look," he said, "we strive for harmony. Your home has been a frequent topic. The wreath with the black ribbon last year, the community flag placement, the late night gathering when your cousins visited." "The wreath was for my aunt," Monica said. "The ribbon was for her funeral. The flag was on my porch column within the guidelines. My cousins came for a birthday and left by 10. None of those events violated any rule." Barton clasped his hands. "Neighbors felt uneasy. Uneasy is not a policy," Monica said. She kept her voice even. "Fair standards are." A door opened behind the reception wall. A woman in a floral dress stepped out with a stack of mail. She glanced at Monica, then at Barton. She gave a careful smile and moved to the side suite. Barton's smile thinned. "I understand your frustration," he said. "But the notice stands. You have 10 days. After that, we assess fines. If you wish, you may submit an appeal to the board. They meet next month." "So the fines begin before the appeal," Monica said. "That is our process." Monica nodded slowly. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. She tapped the camera app and photographed the notice in Barton's hand, the folder on the desk, and the wall clock above his chair. Barton's eyebrows lifted. "There's no need for that." "There is when timelines matter," Monica said. "I will file my appeal today. I will also request the names of the neighbors who filed complaints, as allowed under the open records section of the bylaws." He placed both palms on the surface and leaned forward. "Miss Reed," he said, "let me give you friendly advice. This isn't the city. This is a community. The board listens to people who work with us. You can make this easy or you can make it hard." Monica met his eyes. They were pale blue. She saw no threat there, only habit and the comfort of small power. "I prefer something else," she said. "I prefer what is right." She gathered her folder. She thanked him for his time. She walked out into bright day and stood a moment under the white columns of the porch. A chorus of tree frogs rose from the pond reeds. A heron lifted from the bank and glided low across the water, its long legs trailing like black ink. Monica exhaled. The tightness in her chest eased. She unlocked her car and slid behind the wheel. She looked at the letter on the passenger seat. 10 days. She smiled without humor. 10 days was long enough to do more than remove a trellis. It was long enough to pull a thread. On the drive home, she called Janelle Carter, her friend from nursing school, who had become a paralegal and the kind of neighbor who remembered every rule twice. Janelle answered on the second ring. "You sound like trouble," Janelle said. "Maybe," Monica said. "Tell me how you feel about community standards." "I feel they hate you," Janelle said. "What happened?" Monica explained. Janelle listened without interrupting. When Monica finished, Janelle said she would stop by after work with her laptop. She told Monica to breathe, to save everything, to write a timeline while it was fresh. She said patterns were easier to prove when words were still warm. Monica pulled into her driveway. She parked, stepped out, and stood for a long moment at the gate. The flag she had rescued fluttered in a new breeze. Sun spilled across the grass. A robin hopped along the edge of the bed and tilted its head like it read the notice in her pocket. She looked at the trellis. She looked at the barrel. She thought of Barton's phrase, "Your home has been a frequent topic," and of the way certain people on Crescent Hollow Lane paused when they passed her yard and lowered their voices as if quiet could hide intention. Monica opened the gate and walked up the path. She did not touch the trellis. She did not touch the barrel. She unlocked her front door, set the folder on the table, and began to write. The timeline started with a wreath and a ribbon. It moved to a flag. It marked a birthday with cousins singing too loudly at 9:30 and stopping at 9:45. It included small comments, narrow glances, the day someone left a flyer on her porch about maintaining property values even though her lawn looked like a magazine cover. She ended the first page with the words, "Notice of violation," and the date. She drew a small box next to it and wrote, "Appeal filed." She left the box empty. She planned to check it before noon. By the time Janelle arrived, Monica had brewed tea and washed the flag again and set it in the sun to dry. She had printed the transparency clause and 3 other sections that would matter. She had taken clear photos of her trellis and barrel from the street and from the sidewalk, and from the angle Barton called a certain angle. Monica felt steady. The tightness was gone. Outside, the neighborhood moved along its regular path. A child on a scooter rattled past. A dog barked at a cloud. Somewhere a hedge trimmer buzzed. The day looked ordinary. The day felt different. Monica did not know yet how far the thread reached. She only knew she would not let it tangle her. She would follow it. She would see where it led and who held the other end. And she would not cut down her roses. Not yet. Not ever, if fairness had anything to say. That evening, the sun eased down behind the pines, and the street filled with that quiet hour when people came home from work, and life slowed to the sound of door hinges and porch lights clicking on. Monica sat on her porch swing, the folder resting beside her, waiting for Janelle. The roses climbed the trellis behind her. Even in the soft light, their color glowed. Monica reached up and touched one gently. It was firm and new, like it had no intention of surrendering to anything. The sound of tires on gravel pulled her attention to the driveway. Janelle's silver sedan parked with the smooth familiarity of someone who visited often and never needed to ask where to leave the car. The door opened and Janelle stepped out, laptop bag slung across her shoulder, her hair pinned up the way she always wore it when she meant business. "You wrote the timeline?" Janelle asked as she climbed the porch steps. "Yes," Monica said. "Good," Janelle replied. "We're going to need clarity, because they will try to make everything look like misunderstandings." She took a seat beside Monica and opened her laptop. Monica handed her the folder. For several minutes, the only sound was the clicking of keys and the soft hum of cicadas rising in the trees. Janelle read silently, her eyes narrowing slightly. She took slow breaths, the kind that meant she was thinking in layers. When she finished, she tapped the notice with her index finger. "This isn't about a trellis," she said. "No," Monica said. "It isn't. It's pressure," Janelle continued. "When someone wants you to stop being comfortable. When someone wants you to feel like a guest in your own home." Monica didn't reply. She didn't need to. Janelle's voice softened. "You know what I like about you. You don't fold." Monica gave a small, tired smile. "I learned that from places much harder than Crescent Hollow Lane." Janelle nodded. "Then we will treat this correctly. First, we file the appeal tonight, so the clock stops. Then we request the complaint records. After that, we gather photo evidence. We speak once, clearly, and on the record. No impulsive arguing, no emotional reactions, just facts. Facts make weak things fall apart." Monica exhaled. That steady voice, the one Janelle always carried, was exactly what she needed. "I'll make tea," Monica said. When she returned, Janelle had the appeal form open on the HOA portal. They filled it carefully. They attached every screenshot, including the transparency clause. They submitted the request for complaint records. Monica pressed the final button. The confirmation page appeared. Appeal filed, timestamp recorded. The box she had drawn earlier was no longer empty. The next morning, Monica woke with a clear purpose. She brewed her coffee, put on her walking shoes, and stepped outside the gate. She and Janelle had agreed that they would not wait for a month-long board meeting. They would speak to neighbors directly. It was not about confrontation. It was about presence. Presence had power. The first house belonged to the Wilsons, an older couple with soft voices and a garden full of wind-bent lilies. Monica knocked gently. Mrs. Wilson answered, surprise flickering across her face. "Oh, Monica," she said. "Is everything all right?" "Yes," Monica said. "I just stopped by to ask if you or anyone in your home filed a complaint about my yard or decorations." Mrs. Wilson blinked. "Goodness, no. Your yard is lovely. You know, we've always admired your roses." Monica thanked her and moved on. The Parkers were next. 2 rain barrels sat by their garage, both painted a shade of green that didn't match anything in nature and hadn't ever been questioned. They told Monica they hadn't filed a complaint either. In fact, they had used her rain barrel as inspiration for their own. The Alvarezes shook their heads. The Ramirez shook theirs. The Taylors shook theirs. By the time Monica reached the end of Crescent Hollow Lane, she had spoken to 19 households. Not one had filed a complaint. Not one claimed to have heard anyone else speak of a complaint. And yet, 3 written complaints existed. Barton had said so. Monica walked home slowly, the morning air warm but steady. Something about the clarity of it all settled in her chest. It was not anger. It was not frustration. It was something quieter, heavier, sharper. Truth forming shape. She walked up her driveway and saw a figure standing near her mailbox. It was Barton. He turned when he heard her. His polite smile tried to return, but Monica saw the tension behind it. "Good morning, Miss Reed," he said. "Good morning," Monica replied, locking the gate behind her. "I just wanted to remind you," he began, "that I have 10 days. Monica finished calmly. "Yes, I remember. I filed my appeal." Barton's mouth paused a fraction of a second. He had not expected speed. "I see," he said. "Well, the board still must review." "I also requested the records for the complaints," Monica said. "Thank you for noting the timestamp on the notice. It made my documentation easier." Barton's posture changed. Not a flinch, not a step. Something smaller, like a string being pulled tight inside his shoulders. "You're being a little thorough," he said slowly. "Yes," Monica said. "I am." Silence moved between them. It was not awkward. It was not rushed. It simply existed, heavy with meaning. Barton glanced past Monica into her yard. At the roses, at the barrel, at the flag drying in the sun. You know, he said, this neighborhood values unity. Sometimes strong stands create division. Monica held his gaze, steady and unshaken. Unity without fairness, she said, is not unity. It is silence. And I do not practice silence when something is wrong. Barton swallowed, once, lightly. The board will handle this. I am counting on that, Monica said. She walked past him, up her steps, and closed the gate behind her. She did not look back. That afternoon, Janelle arrived again, not with her laptop, but with something else. A small, portable printer. If they want to play official, she said, setting it on the table, we will be official. They printed photographs. They printed rule excerpts. They printed records of similar homes with similar structures. They printed a clean copy of every piece of evidence. They placed everything in a binder. A clean, white binder, neatly labeled. Property compliance documentation. Reed residence. Monica held it in her hands a moment. It felt like something real. Something grounded. Something that did not bow easily. Janelle smiled. Round 1 is positioning. Now we prepare for round 2. Monica nodded. Outside, the wind moved through the crepe myrtles. Inside, the binder sat like a promise. The thread was now visible, and Monica had begun to pull. The neighborhood stayed unusually quiet the next few days, as if the houses themselves were waiting to hear what would happen next. People still watered their lawns and drove to work and waved when passing each other. But something under the surface had shifted. Crescent Hollow Lane was holding its breath. Monica didn't let the silence distract her. She moved through her days with the same steady rhythm she always had. She woke early, made her coffee, took care of her plants, kept her home clean and warm. But now, when she walked the neighborhood, people stopped her more often. They asked lightly, casually, about the notice. Their eyes carried something heavier than curiosity. On the third morning, Mrs. Alvarez approached her at the mailbox. She didn't say much, only a soft, careful sentence. We're paying attention, she said, before returning to her driveway. It was enough. It told Monica something important. This wasn't just happening to her. It was simply her turn to be the one standing at the front of it. The appeal meeting date arrived faster than expected. It was scheduled for Saturday evening in the HOA community hall, a low brick building near the neighborhood entrance, where birthday parties, bake sales, and homeowner arguments all existed under the same beige ceiling. Monica didn't dress to impress. She dressed to be exact. A navy blouse, pressed neatly, and soft gold earrings. Calm presentation. No signal of performance. Janelle arrived coffee in hand, wearing a soft tan blazer and carrying the binder like it was evidence in a courtroom. They walked together. The sky was still light, the kind of slow golden hour that made the street glow. People noticed when Monica passed. They didn't stare long, but they looked. A few nodded in quiet support. A few watched cautiously. Janelle leaned closer, speaking just loud enough for Monica to hear. When people are deciding who they are, they get quiet. Ignore the quiet. Focus on the truth. Monica nodded. When they reached the hall, the board members were already there. Barton stood near a folding table, reviewing papers. He looked up when they entered. His smile appeared again. The same polite shape, but not reaching his eyes. Miss Reed, he said, thank you for coming. Monica simply replied, of course. There were 5 board members. 3 looked uneasy. 1 looked openly curious. Barton stood with the posture of someone confident he knew the outcome before the discussion even began. Janelle placed the binder on the table. She did not sit until Monica sat first. It was a small thing, but in rooms like this, small things mattered. Barton began by summarizing the claimed violations. He read from a printed sheet about yard appearance, community uniformity, property structure guidelines. His tone was rehearsed, steady, professional. When he finished, Monica simply asked one question. "Can you show the filed complaints?" Something in the room tightened, only slightly, but enough that Monica saw it. Barton cleared his throat before answering. "The complainants' names are confidential," he said. Monica nodded once. "That's acceptable. I'm not asking for names. I'm asking for the complaints themselves." The board exchanged looks. The woman sitting farthest left, a quiet member named Elena, who lived near the neighborhood pond, spoke for the first time. "Barton, do we have the complaint files ready?" Barton hesitated. Just a breath. Just long enough. "No," he said. "I haven't compiled them yet." Janelle did not raise her voice. She did not lean forward. She simply opened the binder, turned a page, and slid a printed copy of the HOA transparency clause into the center of the table. It stated clearly that any formal violation notice must be supported by evidence available upon request. The room stayed quiet. This was not anger. This was structure. Monica spoke slowly, her voice steady and warm. "I walked the neighborhood. I spoke to 19 homeowners. None of them filed a complaint. Some of them didn't even know a violation notice existed. I am not accusing anyone of lying. I am simply stating that something here does not align with the procedures we all agreed to when we chose to live in this community." Elena looked at Monica, then at Barton. Something in her expression changed, the kind of change that came when someone finally saw a puzzle piece in its actual shape. The board did not rush to speak. They let the truth sit in the room, the quiet kind of truth that was not dramatic, not emotional, not loud, just real. Janelle slid a photo of Monica's roses across the table next, then a photo of the rain barrel, then 3 examples of other yards on the same street, with the same features, all without violations. No accusations, just comparison. Fact beside fact. The board members studied the images. Barton looked increasingly still, like someone waiting for something to interrupt. Monica remained calm. No glare, no challenge, just presence. Finally, Elena cleared her throat softly. "I move that we pause enforcement until the board reviews the complaint record in full and verifies it." The man beside her nodded slowly. "I second." Barton did not speak. The vote took only seconds. 3 in favor, 2 silent. The violation was officially paused. Not dismissed, not yet, but the momentum had shifted. Monica exhaled, not in relief, but in confirmation. The work was not finished, but the direction had changed. When she and Janelle stepped outside the hall, the evening air felt different. The street lights had come on. Porch lights flickered from nearby houses. The neighborhood was not silent now. Crickets hummed. Leaves rustled. Someone walked a dog across the street. Janelle looked at Monica and smiled. "You didn't push," she said. "You didn't bend. You simply stood. That's the kind of foundation no one can pull apart." Monica nodded. The wind moved gently through her hair. "The garden still needs watering," she said quietly. They walked back together. The roses waited. The house stood steady. The story was not finished, but Monica had taken back the ground beneath her feet. Sunday morning arrived with a pale, soft light stretching across the neighborhood. The sky was clear, the kind of bright calm that makes shadows look crisp and air feel lighter. Monica stepped outside with her watering can, just like she always did. Her garden had never been a display piece. It was simply a living extension of her patience. The flowers swayed gently in the breeze, as if acknowledging her presence. As she moved quietly among the roses, she noticed something subtle. People were walking slower when they passed her house. They didn't linger, but they looked. Some gave a small nod. Some pretended not to look at all. But they noticed her. They noticed the house. They noticed what had happened. Change wasn't loud today. It was simply present. Later that afternoon, Janelle stopped by with a folder under her arm and that same steady look in her eyes. The binder wasn't as thick as before. It didn't need to be. The weight of proof now rested not on pages, but on silence. Silence had become the strongest evidence, because silence meant there was no legitimate complaint. They sat on the porch. No rush, no tension, just the soft warm shade and gentle breeze. Janelle spoke with calm certainty. The board would review the records within the week. The pause meant that nothing could be enforced until the claims were verified. If no formal complaints existed, the violation notice would be dismissed entirely. But Janelle also explained something important, the part most people overlook. Power rarely disappears because of one meeting. Sometimes, when confronted, it tries to shift, reshape, or wait. Monica listened carefully. She knew that Barton wasn't finished. People like him didn't simply step back because someone showed the rules. They stepped back, watched, and waited for the next opportunity. Not always out of logic, sometimes out of ego, sometimes out of habit, sometimes because power had become their identity. But Monica wasn't afraid. Fear only holds ground where uncertainty lives. Now the uncertainty had shifted, and it was no longer hers. The week moved slowly. Work came and went. The streets looked the same, but eyes carried different weight. People started to speak lightly about what had happened in the hall, not loudly, not boldly, but in small pieces. Small conversations at mailboxes, soft comments on evening walks, a quiet recognition in passing glances. Even those who did not openly speak made room for the truth. It was there, like a candle in a dark room, small but undeniable. On Thursday evening, as the sun began to set in a warm peach and lavender sky, Monica saw someone approaching her yard. It was Elena, the board member who had spoken up. She did not arrive with a clipboard or formal posture. She simply walked with her hands folded gently, offering a polite greeting. She didn't try to apologize for the board. She didn't try to explain Barton. She didn't offer excuses. She only said one sentence, in a quiet voice that held respect. "Thank you for not letting this go unanswered." Monica nodded once. Respect, just like truth, does not need to be loud to be clear. Elena stayed for only a few moments before returning down the sidewalk, but her words lingered long after she left. Monica understood something then. The situation had never been just about her. It had never been just about flowers, or paint, or gardens, or rules. It was about how a community chooses what it stands on. Not just physically, but morally. People think change happens in crowds, or speeches, or arguments. But sometimes it happens in a single quiet moment. A moment when someone chooses to see differently and cannot unsee again. The full board reconvened on Saturday. Monica attended again, not with nerves, but with clarity. The hall felt different this time, as if the air itself already knew the outcome. The meeting lasted only 19 minutes. There were no heated exchanges, no dramatic arguments, no raised voices. The board presented the findings. No complaint forms, no photographs, no documentation, no evidence. The violation was dismissed. Official, final, closed. Not because Monica fought, not because she argued, but because she stood. Janelle spoke only one sentence after the decision. We appreciate the board's fairness. There was no need to say more. Barton didn't look at Monica as he signed the dismissal. His expression didn't reveal anger or regret, only a quiet frustration, like someone who had lost a game they believed they had already won. But Monica didn't look at him either. He was no longer the center of this story. When Monica stepped outside after the meeting, she paused on the sidewalk. The wind was warm. The trees moved gently. A few neighbors watched from their porches, not with gossip, but with recognition. Something in the structure of this street had changed. Not visibly, not loudly, but deeply. Monica didn't feel triumphant. She didn't feel victory like a drumbeat or celebration. She felt steady, rooted, grounded, like her garden. She walked home slowly, letting the sunlight fall across her shoulders. At her gate, she stopped to look at her roses, not to check them, not to protect them, just to see them. Their petals moved softly in the breeze, opening toward the light. They had never been the problem. They had simply been the excuse. Monica exhaled softly. Her home stood exactly where it always had. Her garden continued to grow. And she remained exactly who she had always been. Only now, the neighborhood could finally see her clearly. Monday morning came quietly. The neighborhood looked the same at first glance. Driveways, trimmed hedges, mailboxes standing in a line. But there was something new in the air. Something subtle and hard to name. People who once crossed the street to avoid eye contact now offered small nods. Not all of them, not dramatically, but enough to feel. Respect does not always arrive in loud applause. Sometimes it shows up as a simple pause before looking away. An acknowledgement that something meaningful happened. Monica took her time, stepping outside this morning. She didn't rush through her routine. The air was cool. The kind that feels fresh before the sun settles into its heat. She carried her coffee out to the porch and sat in her usual chair. The flowers in her garden moved gently in the early breeze, as if stretching themselves awake. She watched the street rather than the screen of her phone. She listened to birds instead of news. There was nothing to hurry toward, no anxiety pulling her forward, no confusion weighing behind her. Peace wasn't loud, it was steady. A few houses down, Mr. Finch watered his front lawn. They had never spoken more than a good morning. But today, after a moment of hesitation, he lifted his hand in a brief wave. It wasn't an attempt to be friendly. It was something more honest than that. It was a gesture of respect, a silent acknowledgement that he had seen, understood, and reconsidered. Monica returned the wave. That was enough. Later in the day, she decided to take a walk around the neighborhood. The same streets she had walked many times, but now with a different awareness. The sidewalk was familiar. The houses hadn't moved, but her understanding of her place among them had shifted. This neighborhood had rules, some written, some unspoken. People here valued order. But for so long, Order had been confused with sameness. The gardens looked identical. The homes followed the same patterns. The seasonal decorations changed together like a script everyone quietly agreed to. Yet change had arrived without knocking. Not dramatic, not loud, but real. As Monica walked past one house, a woman on her porch avoided eye contact at first. But then she looked up, as if deciding something inside herself. She stood, stepped forward, and asked if Monica would like to see her hydrangea bushes. The question was simple, but the meaning behind it was larger than either of them acknowledged. Connection begins in ordinary moments. They walked around to the side yard. The hydrangeas were full and blue, clustered like soft clouds near the fence. They talked about soil and sunlight, about watering schedules, about late frost and pruning. It was conversation without tension, without roles, without the shadow of conflict. When Monica headed back toward the sidewalk, the woman paused before returning inside. She didn't say thank you in words. It was in the quiet look they shared, a look that understood that growth doesn't only happen in gardens. It happens in people too. By mid-afternoon, the street was quiet again. Children would be home later. Cars would fill driveways. The rhythm would continue, but now with a new cadence. As Monica returned home, she noticed something at the edge of her yard. A small folded piece of paper tucked beneath one of her potted plants. For a moment, her breath caught. Old habits of caution rose. But when she picked it up and unfolded it, the handwriting was careful and gentle. There were only 5 words. You handled yourself with grace. No signature, no demand, no explanation. Not everything needs to announce its author. Monica didn't try to guess who wrote it. Instead, she placed the note inside her mailbox. Not to send it, not to hide it, simply to keep it safe. There are pieces of truth you don't throw away, even if you never speak of them. That evening, Janelle stopped by. This time, she didn't bring a binder or documents. She didn't arrive with strategy or purpose. She came simply as a person who understood how long quiet battles can feel. They sat on the porch again. The sky stretched wide, turning from gold to peach to slow-moving blue, the kind of evening that invites reflection without forcing it. Janelle spoke about something important, not legal matters, not neighborhood dynamics, but the difference between winning and changing. Winning is temporary, changing is lasting. What happened wasn't just the dismissal of a violation notice. It was a shift in perception, a rebalancing of how people understood authority, fairness, and belonging. Monica didn't respond right away. She didn't need to. Some truths settled gently before fully forming. They sat until the first porch lights blinked on across the street. When Janelle left, there were no promises, no warnings, no speeches, just a quiet understanding that the next part of the story would not involve paperwork or meetings. It would unfold slowly, in how people spoke, how they noticed, how they remembered. Inside the house, Monica walked to her hallway. The evening light cast warm shadows across the walls. There, next to the framed photos of family and places she loved, stood a small wooden shelf holding a single potted plant, a gift from her mother many years ago. She touched one of its leaves, softly. Home isn't about walls or property lines. It is about belonging without needing permission. And she belonged here. Not because the board allowed it, not because the neighbors accepted it, but because she chose to root herself, like her garden, in soil that held its own memory and strength. The wind outside moved softly, carrying the scent of earth and quiet beginnings. Tomorrow would come. New days would unfold. But now, Monica walked into the next chapter, not as someone defending her place, but as someone who had already earned it. The next few days passed with a quiet rhythm, but nothing about the neighborhood felt quite the same anymore. People pretended things were back to normal, yet there was a shift underneath, subtle as a change in the wind. The world outside looked unchanged, but the way eyes moved, the way doors opened, and the way conversations paused told a different story. Monica noticed it first in the mornings, when she stepped out to water her plants. A few neighbors, who once hurried inside, now lingered a second longer. Not all of them. Some still held their judgments tight, like shields they were afraid to put down. But others seemed to watch with curiosity instead of suspicion. Curiosity, after all, is the first step toward understanding. She did not need applause or smiles. She only wanted space to breathe without constantly defending her right to be present. And slowly, life began to give her that space. The neighborhood kids still played near the sidewalks after school. Their laughter rose into the air as easily as always. But now, when they ran past her yard, they waved. Not dramatic waves, not exaggerated gestures. Simple acknowledgments. A recognition that she was part of the environment, not separate from it. One afternoon, she sat on her porch again, the same place where so much had changed. The sunlight stretched across the lawn, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of fresh-cut grass. Her coffee had cooled, but she didn't mind. It was the quiet she valued. She watched the street in its normal rhythm. Delivery trucks passed by. A neighbor jogged by with headphones on. A dog barked at nothing in particular. It was ordinary life, and after everything, ordinary felt like peace. Time has a way of slowly softening sharp memories, not erasing them, not forgetting, just placing them somewhere where they do not scratch you every time you breathe. But the world does not stop, even when peace begins. A few days later, a letter appeared in Monica's mailbox. A plain envelope. No return stamp. No markings. Just her name, written in small, careful handwriting. She held it for a moment before opening it. The weight of silence around it felt familiar. The kind that asks you to slow down. Inside the envelope was a single sheet of paper. The writing was neat and steady. It said, "I am rethinking everything. Thank you for not responding with anger. I am learning. I hope one day to say this out loud." There was no signature. There didn't need to be. Growth rarely announces itself. Monica folded the paper and placed it in a small wooden box in her living room, where she stored memories worth keeping. Not because she needed to look at it again, but because it represented something rare. Change beginning from the inside. Meanwhile, the HOA board held another meeting. This one was different. There was no tense shouting, no quiet disapproval disguised as policy. People entered the room slowly, with cautious expressions. Those who once supported the board unquestioningly now carried uncertainty. When Lydia spoke, her voice did not hold the same sharp energy. It sounded smaller, thinner, as if she had realized something important, but did not yet know how to sit with it. The board reviewed upcoming neighborhood matters, landscaping, street repairs, event planning, all the usual topics. But beneath their words, everyone knew they were trying to move forward without addressing what had happened. Change often arrives long before anyone learns how to talk about it. Monica didn't attend this meeting. She didn't need to. Her presence had already shaped the neighborhood. She didn't need to stand in a room to be part of its conversation. Sometimes the most powerful voice is the quiet one that does not ask to speak. One evening, Monica stood at her window, as the day faded. The sky changed colors slowly, from warm gold to soft violet. The world looked at peace for a moment. She rested her hand against the glass, not thinking of battles or victories, but simply breathing. This house was not just a house. This neighborhood was not just a neighborhood. It was a chapter of her life, a chapter she had chosen, and that choice meant something deeper than any rule or policy. Belonging is not given, it is lived. She walked outside barefoot on the cool grass and let the evening air settle around her. Her garden swayed gently, moving as though alive, with quiet resilience. Each plant had roots. Each root held fast to the soil. Each stem grew upward, reaching for light, even when shadows fell. She saw herself in that. Not dramatic, not loud, just growing. Later that night, she sat by her window with a small notebook in her lap. She began writing. Not a speech, not a response, not a plan, just reflections. She wrote about standing her ground. She wrote about dignity. She wrote about strength that did not need to raise its voice. Her handwriting flowed slowly, steady like her breathing. She wrote a single sentence and let it settle across the page. Sometimes the most powerful change happens quietly, when no one is watching. She closed the notebook gently. Outside, porch lights flickered on across the street. The neighborhood settled into the hush of evening. Cars rolled into driveways. Dinner dishes clinked inside kitchens. Curtains closed softly. Life continued. But life was not the same. Not for the neighbors. Not for the board. Not for the community. And not for Monica. She had not just endured an unfair moment. She had reshaped the space around her simply by standing. Not as someone demanding acknowledgement, but as someone who already knew her worth. And now, the neighborhood knew it too. The sun rose slowly the next morning, spreading soft light across the houses and lawns of the neighborhood. It was a quiet day, the kind that arrives without any big announcements. Birds moved between the trees. A lawn sprinkler clicked on across the street. The world looked calm, untouched, the way mornings often do before people begin to move. Inside her home, Monica stood in the kitchen, heating water for tea. The steam curled upward into the still air. She breathed deeply and felt something she hadn't felt for a long time. Peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from winning an argument. Not the kind that depends on someone else agreeing with her. This was the calm that comes from knowing she had done the right thing, stood her ground, and held her dignity close, even when the world tried to shake it loose. Sometimes, life doesn't give applause. Sometimes, there is no cheering, no dramatic celebration. Sometimes the victory is simply waking up and feeling settled in yourself. She carried her cup to the porch again. The same porch that had seen tension, confrontation, suspicion, silence. But today, it felt different. The air felt more open. The space felt like hers. Across the street, a neighbor stepped outside to pick up the morning paper. His gaze lifted briefly, and for the first time, he didn't look away quickly. He nodded. Not a deep nod, not a dramatic gesture, just a small, simple acknowledgement. She returned the nod, gentle and steady. It was enough. Growth does not happen all at once. It happens like this, in small steps, in quiet exchanges, in brief moments of human recognition. The neighborhood was learning, slowly, not perfectly, but learning. Later in the afternoon, Monica walked down the street to check on her mailbox. People were out, some trimming hedges, some walking dogs, some sitting on porches with sunglasses and iced drinks. Life was going on. But eyes followed her now, with less suspicion and more awareness. Awareness is not acceptance. Yet, awareness is the beginning of acceptance. She did not expect everyone to understand her journey. She did not expect everyone to change. People change when they are ready. But the silence that once tried to isolate her was fading. It no longer felt like a wall. It felt like space. Open, unsteady space where something new might grow. At the mailbox, she found another letter. This one was official, from the HOA. Her heart tightened for a moment. Old fear, old memory, old instinct. But when she opened it, she did not see accusations or threats. Just 2 lines. The board will be reviewing its conduct policies. Residents will now be included in these discussions. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't complete change, but it was movement. Even a small shift can change the direction of an entire story. Monica folded the paper and stood quietly for a moment. She didn't smile. She didn't tear up. She simply breathed, because sometimes simply being recognized is enough to feel seen. As evening arrived, she walked to the edge of her yard and watched the sky deepen to purple. Lights came on in windows. The street lights flickered awake. She could hear someone laughing in their driveway. A dog's collar jingled down the sidewalk. Ordinary life, beautiful in its simplicity. She realized something important. She had not needed to prove herself to this neighborhood. Her existence did not require permission. Her story was not something anyone else could define. She belonged here simply because she lived here. Because she woke up in this house. Because she planted flowers in this soil. Because she filled this space with her presence. Belonging is not granted. Belonging is lived. And she had lived it fully. Before going inside, she touched the doorway gently with the side of her hand. Not as a ritual, not as a dramatic gesture, just a small reminder to herself. I stood here. I stayed. I did not break. Strength is often quiet. Resilience is often silent, but unshakable all the same. She closed the door softly behind her and let the evening settle. Thank you for watching this story. Remember, standing up for yourself does not always mean shouting. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stay calm, stay steady, and stay true to who you are. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. And most importantly, stay strong, stay grounded, stay you.